The morning sun painted gold streaks across the city skyline as cars glided past the tall glass tower of Whitmore Industries, one of the most powerful business empires in the country. But just outside its towering entrance stood a man who didn't belong to this world of luxury and shine. His shirt was plain, his boots worn, and the faint oil stains on his hands told the story of a man who worked hard for every single dollar. His name was Caleb Turner, a 32-year-old single father who had come not for money, but for dignity. Caleb clutched a small folder tightly to his chest as the security guard at the gate eyed him with suspicion. Behind those gates was the man he needed to see. Billionaire Adrian Whitmore, the owner of the company that had changed his life forever, though not in the way Caleb would have ever wished for. But before Caleb could even step forward, the tall guard, in a pressed black suit, burst into laughter, shaking his head as he blocked Caleb's path. You want to see Mr. Whitmore? Do you even have an appointment?" The laughter was loud, echoing across the marble entrance. People passing by turned their heads to watch the scene. The poor man at the gate being mocked by the powerful, Caleb didn't respond. He simply reached into his pocket, his eyes calm but determined, and pulled out an old photograph, the last picture he had taken with his little daughter before everything went wrong. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of good hearts, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your one click helps stories like this reach more people who still believe in humanity. Caleb's life had never been easy. 2 years ago, he was a skilled mechanic running a small garage in a modest town. His wife had passed away early, leaving him to raise his 5-year-old daughter, Amelia, alone. She was his world, a bright-eyed, curious little girl who would wait every evening at the workshop door, running into his arms when she saw him. They didn't have much, but they had love, and that was enough. Until one night, a black SUV pulled up outside his garage, bringing with it the kind of trouble Caleb had never seen before. The vehicle belonged to Whitmore Industries. Their chief engineer had broken down miles away, and Caleb had been the only one nearby who could help. He fixed the engine under the cold rain in less than 30 minutes, refusing extra payment and just asking for a fair wage. The next morning, the same SUV returned, but this time with the company's logo removed and 2 men in suits stepping out. They asked Caleb questions about what he saw, who he spoke to, and what he knew. Confused, Caleb told them everything truthfully. But days later, his garage was raided under suspicion of dealing with stolen auto parts. Someone had framed him, and by the time he realized, his business license was gone, his tools confiscated, and his name smeared. Whitmore Industries denied involvement. Of course, Caleb spent months proving his innocence, only to be ignored by everyone, lawyers, reporters, and even the police. All he had left was Amelia, and the promise that he would one day clear his name for her sake. He took jobs wherever he could. Construction, delivery, repairs, but the stain on his record followed him everywhere. And then, just when hope seemed lost, a small piece of paper changed everything. It was a receipt, a crumpled, water-stained document left behind in an old toolbox he had kept from the garage. On it was a name, Victor Cross, head of security for Whitmore Industries, and the same man whose car Caleb had repaired that night. The same man who had filed a complaint that Caleb was stealing parts. The truth hit Caleb like thunder. Someone inside the company had ruined his life to cover their own mistake. And so, here he was now, standing outside the very place where his downfall had begun. But before he could explain his purpose, the billionaire's guard scoffed again. "You think a billionaire like Adrian Whitmore has time for you? Go fix a car somewhere, buddy." Caleb took a slow breath and quietly said, "I'm not leaving until I speak to him. It's about a crime committed under his name." The guard chuckled, stepping closer. "A crime? You sure you're not the criminal?" That's when Caleb rolled up his sleeve. The laughter stopped instantly. Across Caleb's arm were burned scars, deep and twisted, the kind only someone who had once pulled a burning engine apart with bare hands could bear. "These," Caleb said in a steady, quiet tone, "are from the night I saved your company's engineer when your fancy SUV caught fire. The same night your head of security framed me for stealing from you." The guard froze. His smirk vanished, and before he could speak, the glass doors behind him opened. A tall man in a gray suit stepped out, Adrian Whitmore himself. The billionaire had overheard enough. His cold, commanding voice cut through the air. "Let him in. Inside the towering glass building, Caleb's worn boots clicked softly against marble floors. The smell of perfume, coffee, and fresh polish filled the air. Every eye in the lobby turned toward him, whispering. He looked out of place among suits and silk ties, yet there was something unshakable about his presence. The quiet strength of a man who had lost everything but refused to bend. Adrian led him into his private office, vast, panoramic, and glowing with sunlight. "You have 5 minutes," Adrian said, sitting behind his polished desk. "Tell me why you're here." Caleb placed the old photograph of himself and Amelia on the desk, alongside the faded receipt. "I'm here because someone under your company's name destroyed my life," he said softly. "And I have proof." As Caleb spoke, his voice cracked but never broke. He told Adrian everything. The night of the engine repair, the visit from the men in suits, the raid, the loss of his business, and the months of humiliation that followed. He spoke of how Amelia had asked him once, "Daddy, why do people say you're bad?" and how he hadn't known how to answer. His story stretched for nearly half an hour, and by the end Adrian Whitmore, the man known for his ruthless composure, sat silent, his gaze fixed on the photograph. "Victor Cross," Caleb continued, "filed a false report to cover up that he had been drinking that night. He blamed me for his own mistake. I don't want money, Mr. Whitmore. I want my name cleared. That's all." The billionaire leaned back, his jaw tense. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes, only quiet guilt. He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Get Victor Cross in here," he ordered. Within minutes, the man entered, confident as ever, until he saw Caleb. His face went pale. What followed was an interrogation so tense it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. Adrian's questions were sharp and precise, leaving Victor stammering until his lies began to crumble. Documents were pulled, timestamps verified, and within an hour, the truth was undeniable. Caleb Turner had been framed, and Whitmore Industries had been complicit in the silence that followed. By noon, security escorted Victor Cross out of the building in handcuffs. Adrian stood up, walked around the desk, and faced Caleb. "I can't change what you went through," he said quietly, "but I can make sure the world knows the truth." A week later, Caleb's story hit every major newspaper. Not as a scandal, but as a redemption. Single father wrongly accused by billion-dollar firm, cleared after 2 years. Adrian personally issued a public apology and reopened Caleb's garage, fully restored and upgraded under the company's sponsorship. When Caleb returned to that small building, Amelia stood beside him holding his hand. Her smile, wide and innocent, was all he had ever wanted. The first day back, as sunlight poured over the freshly painted sign, "Turner's Auto Care," Caleb wiped his hands on his old rag and looked around. Neighbors came to shake his hand. Reporters clicked photos. But what meant most was when Adrian himself arrived, no cameras this time, and handed Caleb a letter. It was an employment offer. Head of technical training for Whitmore's new community program for underprivileged mechanics. "You deserve better than what we gave you," Adrian said. Caleb hesitated, then smiled faintly. "I'll think about it. But right now, I just want to fix cars again." And for the first time in years he felt peace. Months passed, and Caleb became a symbol of resilience, a man who had faced the cruelty of power yet never lost his humanity. His small garage turned into a haven for those who couldn't afford expensive repairs. Sometimes people tried to pay more, but he would always say the same words: "Just help someone else when you can." On a bright afternoon, Caleb stood outside his shop, watching Amelia ride her bike along the road. The same guard who once laughed at him drove by, stopping awkwardly before rolling down the window. "Hey, Turner," he said sheepishly. "I heard what happened. I was wrong about you." Caleb smiled gently. "We've all been wrong about someone. What matters is that we learn." The guard nodded, then drove away, but his eyes were softer than before. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Every story we share is a reminder that even when the world looks down on you, truth and kindness can still rise higher. And before we end, here's a special request. Comment below. I believe in second chances. If you think everyone deserves to be seen for who they truly are, not what others say about them. Because sometimes the wrong man turns out to be the right one all along. The end.